Good evening. My name is Ted Gregory, and I'm with Allstate Insurance Company. I am proud to introduce tonight's special, Eye on Hurricanes, sponsored by your local Allstate agents. We feel fortunate to have partnered with Channel 4 to sponsor this important and timely information on hurricane preparedness. Hurricanes are a fact of life here in southeast Louisiana and all along the Gulf Coast. It is not necessarily a question of if a hurricane will hit, but when. And when a disaster does strike, we want you to be ready. At Allstate, we hope the information you are about to see will motivate you to get your hurricane plan in place. If you already have a plan, take a few moments and review it once again with your family. Allstate is committed to being there for you before, during, and after a catastrophic event, such as a hurricane. Our agents have information and brochures available to you at no charge. Drop by any Allstate agent's office and ask for a copy, or check out our website at allstate.com. Knowledge is a powerful tool and can go a long way in saving someone you love.
From WWL-TV, this is an Eyewitness News special program, Eye on Hurricanes, with Angela Hill and Dennis Woltering.
Metro New Orleans is once again in that dangerous time of year.
It's hurricane season, the period from June 1st to November 30th when deadly storms can develop and threaten our homes and our families.
Forecasters say this could be a more active hurricane season than we've seen in recent years. But the good news is that the metro area may also be better prepared to deal with the big storms than ever before.
In this special program, we will look at why there is an increased chance of hurricanes, what precautions are being taken by emergency preparedness agencies, and important things you should know to help keep your family safe. And we invite you to test your knowledge about hurricanes with a quiz that will appear throughout the show.
Well, of course, we could not begin to talk about hurricanes without first talking with the man who has spent half a century tracking them, Channel 4 hurricane analyst Nash Roberts.
Nash, the forecasts are saying we're going to have more big storms than last year.
I think that we'll have more storms than we had last year, simply because El Nino last year, a very strong El Nino, kept the storm formation depressed. Mm-hmm. This year we won't have the El Nino effect, and I think that you'll probably wind up with at least 10 storms, which is around a normal season.
We've been so lucky not to have big storms hit our area in quite a while, but that can lead to complacency.
That is a real problem. If anybody that saw what happened over on the Gulf Coast when Camille went in, a really big storm, or Hugo went into South Carolina, and what Andrew did to Miami and even part of Louisiana, if you see that sort of thing, you can't be complacent.
Mm-hmm. Is there any kind of a pattern, Nash, that indicates when a big storm's going to come in?
The only predictors that I look at, number one, I think that you have to have a quiet El Nino year. And number two, the chances are that you should have a very high water temperature, water surface temperature. Those two things combined could cause some pretty intense storms.
We're glad you're here, Nash. Thank you.
It's been an entire generation since the last major storm, Hurricane Betsy, scored a direct hit on New Orleans. Bill Elder covered that storm and others that were devastating to our neighbors.
He brings us dramatic reminders of how destructive these storms can be.
Anyone who has ever been trapped by a major hurricane knows the fear. New Orleanians felt it on September the 9th in 1965 when Hurricane Betsy roared up the Mississippi River with winds over 120 miles an hour. 81 people died. Many of them drowned in the storm surge that pushed water over levees in New Orleans' lower Ninth Ward and in Chalmette. The levees kept homes from being washed away, but after the storm, they served like bowls holding 5 and 6 feet of water inside of the flooded area.
It's 10 o'clock in Biloxi now, and the eye of the storm, they say, is still over 2 hours away.
More incredible still was Hurricane Camille just 4 years later. Camille's winds topped 200 miles an hour and pushed a 25-foot wall of water over the Mississippi Gulf Coast. The devastation we saw the next day was incredible. There was rubble where stately homes had been. Bay St. Louis, Pass Christian, Long Beach, and Gulfport. Huge ships were tossed on the beach like toys. Many people refused to evacuate. I talked to one Pass Christian motel owner who had 22 guests when the storm hit.
At any time, was there any doubt in your mind whether or not all 22 were going to perish?
I should say there was. About 12 o'clock, at the height of the hurricane.
More than 260 people died in the storm, including 9 people in Lower Plaquemines Parish, where Camille pushed water over the Mississippi River levee. It doesn't take a big storm to cause severe property damage. In 1985, Hurricane Juan had winds of only 85 miles an hour, but it lingered for 5 days over southeast Louisiana and pushed the Gulf tides right up to the West Bank's doorstep. The storm was blamed for 12 deaths and $500 million in damage. It doesn't have to be a direct hit for a hurricane to kill. In 1992, after nearly destroying South Florida, Hurricane Andrew slammed into Louisiana near Morgan City. 50 miles away, the storm spawned a tornado that raked the LaPlace subdivision.
Is this where you lived? Do you live here?
No, my father-in-law lived here.
Your father-in-law, where is he now?
He's the one casualty that died for the hurricane in the state of Louisiana.
The Louisiana death count from Andrew was ultimately 2, both of them in LaPlace. It is sometimes hard to believe the power of these storms, but anyone who has lived through one knows.
And the house would keep on crunching and crunching, tearing and ripping, just like you pull nails out of it.
We still thought we were in the
And we thought, oh God, here's what we're going to do. We're going to die here right now.
This is Bill Elder for Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
Hurricanes are categorized based on their strength. A Category 1 has winds of 74 to 95 miles per hour. Danny last year and Juan in 1985 were Category 1 hurricanes. A Category 2 storm has 96 to 110 mile per hour winds. A Category 3, like Betsy and Andrew, has winds of 111 to 130 miles per hour. A Category 4 is in the 131 to 155 miles per hour range. And a Category 5 has winds of 155 plus. Camille was a 5. A lot has changed since Betsy. Back then there were no geostationary satellites to keep a constant eye on hurricanes, no computer tracking projections.
At least that big gap between major storms has given scientists a chance to develop new technologies. Joining us now is Channel 4 Chief Meteorologist Carl Arredondo.
Dennis and Angela, we still play a bit of a guessing game on where a storm will go, but even in the last few years, we've seen improvements in our abilities to assess a storm's power.
This is what radar looked like 6 years ago when Hurricane Andrew hit Louisiana in 1992. Now we have Doppler radar. It allows us to look inside these storms to determine winds, rotation, and rainfall amounts. If Doppler radar had been available in 1992, we may have been better able to detect the LaPlace tornado that was spawned by Hurricane Andrew. There are also faster and better computer models used to forecast tropical systems. These computers rely on information that comes from many sources: satellites, floating buoys in the Gulf, and from the hurricane hunters who fly into the thick of the storm to gather data. But the hunters now have a new flying partner. It's a small jet that can fly higher and farther than the turboprop hunters. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is using the jet to get better information on the winds out hundreds of miles around the hurricanes, winds that steer the hurricane to go one direction or the other.
There is a move to get more weather buoys off the Louisiana coast. 2 LSU scientists say it would provide additional information that would make computer projections for Louisiana more accurate.
But as a meteorologist, are you more confident now with what we have?
I think we're a step further than where we were, so hopefully with the new technologies in place, it would add that extra step to help us better prepare for hurricanes.
Oh, thanks, Carl.
Now it's time for our first hurricane quiz question. Most of the damage from hurricanes in Louisiana has been caused by which of these 2 dangers? High winds or high water? The answer is water. Hurricane Betsy pushed a 10-foot storm surge of water that helped flood parts of New Orleans for days. In the lower 9th Ward, houses remained standing after Betsy, but they were standing in 6 feet of water.
Stephanie Regal reports it's that wind-driven water that makes it imperative that people closest to open water evacuate early.
The line that divides land and sea is increasingly blurred in southeast Louisiana, and that means when a big storm hits, the low-lying coastal parishes will be in greater danger than ever before.
Because the coastline is getting so much closer to our populated areas, as the Gulf gets closer, storm surge and the effects of hurricanes get closer and get intensified.
A case in point is Hurricane Danny. It was just a tropical storm when most of us went to sleep last July 17th. But overnight, while over marshy land, the storm intensified into a Category 1 hurricane that dumped feet of floodwater onto Lower Plaquemine and St. Bernard parishes.
Our safety is being lost day by day as we lose our barrier islands and our marshlands.
Which is why emergency officials like Wendell Curole and Lafourche Parish are focused on a single plan for this hurricane season.
Do what you can do. Get as far away as you can.
Evacuation is, in short, the only plan for the parishes of southeast Louisiana in the event of a major hurricane. And emergency officials say it'll only work if people leave early.
But the main thing we want to stress is the people in St. Bernard to be prepared. Have a family plan.
If all of this scares you, you're not alone. In fact, emergency preparedness officials tell us they're frightened too. But you can take some comfort in this. In just the past couple of years, local parishes in this state have come together as never before and worked on a plan for evacuating and dealing with a major storm. There's a Southeast Louisiana Hurricane Task Force, for instance, which has identified evacuation routes and shelters in so-called safe sectors of the state.
It's not very strong as far as uplift pressure.
Then there's a team of LSU engineers who are trying to determine if shelters like Belle Chase High School in Plaquemine Parish are in fact safe. Such shelters will be open in minor hurricanes, though in big ones, say area officials.
You need to evacuate. You need to get out of here.
The need to move people out fast is why repairs are underway right now in Lafourche Parish to the Leeville Bridge, the only link between Grand Island, Fouchon, and the rest of the state. Emergency officials say keeping evacuation routes in tip-top shape is really all they can do now. That, and hope people heed their warnings in time. Stephanie Regal, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
Residents from the unprotected coastal parishes should know their evacuation routes well. The evacuation route from Grand Isle, Terrebonne, and Lafourche is along Highway 1. Lafitte area residents have Highway 3134. Plaquemine's West Bank is along Highway 23, while the East Bank of Plaquemines takes Highway 39. St. Bernard residents also take Highways 39 and 46. Residents of those areas must evacuate in the face of Category 1 and 2 hurricanes.
Our next quiz question is, what level of hurricane would it take to force water over our levee system? A Category 5, a Category 3, or a Category 1? The answer is a Category 3, if it is moving slowly and building up a greater storm surge.
New Orleans and most of Jefferson Parish can usually withstand Category 1 and 2 hurricanes because of the levee system.
But as Karen Swensen reports, our levees do have their limits.
It's our greatest shield against a hurricane tidal surge, a lip of protection that keeps the lake and river from spilling into our neighborhoods.
The levees in the metro area and the flood walls are in very good shape.
Still, there's room for improvement. In New Orleans, crews are rebuilding bridges so they look like this one over the 17th Street Canal on Veterans. By sealing the sides, the water is kept out, the floodgates are kept open, and residents can evacuate. And on the east and west banks of Jefferson Parish, crews are raising parts of their levees to higher heights.
But consider this, even though the levees are intact, they're built to withstand just so much water. Here on the West Bank, even a slow-moving Hurricane 1 could present a major problem.
The most vulnerable area? East of the Harvey Canal, where the levees haven't been raised yet. Some say it wouldn't take much to overtop the 6.5-foot levees.
The Harvey Canal is right in the middle of the West Bank of Jefferson Parish. And I would think we have probably 400,000 people that could be affected.
And on the East Bank in New Orleans, the levees can provide adequate protection up to a fast-moving Category 3 storm.
I don't want to say that the levees can withstand a slow 3 or a 4, a slow 4 or a slow 5 because they're not designed to do that.
For example, if Andrew or Opal or Gilbert had eyed the metro area, New Orleans would have been in trouble.
We design for the average, we're prepared to fight the worst, and we hope for the best.
Karen Swensen, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
Another quiz question. What is the best way to survive a Category 4 hurricane? Board up your windows and stay inside your home, or evacuate to an area north of I-12, or go to a nearby high-rise building. The correct answer is evacuate.
It's in the face of a slow-moving Category 3 hurricane or devastating winds of a Category 4 or 5 storm that officials might order a mandatory evacuation of the metro area. If that were to happen, the eastern half of the metro area would be directed out I-10 east, then to I-59 north into Mississippi or I-12 west.
The western half would be sent north on Highway 61, which is Airline Drive, I-10, I-55, or the Causeway. If you're in your car, updated evacuation information will be broadcast on WWL radio at 870 on your AM radio.
Evacuation is the subject of our next quiz question. If a mandatory evacuation were ordered, how long would it take to move everyone from the metro New Orleans area? 72 hours, 48 hours, or 24 hours? The correct answer is 72 hours.
That length of time is what makes total evacuation of the metro area nearly impossible. And Patrick Evans reports the task of making the evacuation call falls on the shoulders of the emergency preparedness offices in each parish.
This is the Emergency Operating Center. This is where our department representatives come. They're assigned up here.
Robert Eichhorn directs the Emergency Preparedness Office in New Orleans, a tough task in an area that could become one big pond if a major hurricane hits, something this computer model of southeast Louisiana in Eichhorn's office shows in detail.
This is a fast-moving Category 1. We get water up in here. We get some water out in this area because we do not have levees out in Lake Catherine, Fort Pike, and Venetian Isles. About 800 folks are outside of the levied area. Everything else is in good shape in Orleans. We have Category 2. You see the water coming in. We're getting some water over here, too. Here's a fast-moving 3. Still in good shape in the city, in Orleans. And then when you go to a 4, we get just a little bit area that may still be high and dry. And on a 5, you've got the computer's showing us the worst-case scenario is everything is water.
That same technology is in this mobile command center, where officials can track storms from outside of a potentially affected area. It rolls out when an evacuation order is given. Eichhorn says you should leave when you see this truck roll, but if you don't, he says you might have one last chance to survive in an area designated by the city as a last refuge site.
It will not be your traditional shelter with the nurse and the cots and the power. It may be just a space 2 by 2 where you can stand up and it's safer than where you were, safer say in your house, that you may survive the storm.
They won't reveal those shelters until the last minute, so people won't count on going to them. I'm Patrick Evans, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
If Metro New Orleans had to evacuate, officials have plans to open shelters in the mid to northern part of the state. Law enforcement officers along the evacuation routes would direct motorists to those shelters.
Our next quiz question deals with an important evacuation issue as well. When would authorities be forced to close the Causeway and Mississippi River bridges because of a hurricane? When there are too many cars on the bridge? When the hurricane is 24 hours away? When sustained winds in the area reach 55 miles an hour? The answer is when the wind reaches 55 miles an hour.
The North Shore has grown tremendously in the last 10 years, and many feel that they may be too far removed from the Gulf to suffer seriously from the effects of a hurricane.
But anyone who has seen the flooding that has occurred in St. Tammany because of heavy rains will understand the warnings. In this report from Eyewitness News, North Shore Bureau Chief Mike Ross.
The North Shore's beauty and appeal in great part is due to Lake Pontchartrain. But the desire to be close to the water also makes people living north of the lake likely targets for the full wrath of hurricanes.
Southeastern St. Tammany Parish in the rim of Lake Pontchartrain is a very vulnerable area.
Computers at the National Weather Service office near Slidell show that a Category 3 hurricane on a northwest track could create storm surges of up to 17 feet along the lakeshore. And North Shore neighborhoods along the water's edge could be in great peril.
Oh, certainly the Slidell area is vulnerable. There's no question about that in this particular case.
The other big threat, torrential rains from a slow-moving tropical storm could cause widespread flooding across St. Tammany, cutting off escape routes.
Is St. Tammany Parish a good place to be in a major hurricane? If that's your question, the answer unequivocally is no. Not a good place to be. I wouldn't want to be here.
It's happened before. The great hurricane of 1947 devastated St. Tammany Parish.
Well, in the 47 storm, I was only about 9 years old.
But Dennis Bishak remembers the 4-foot wall of water that swamped his family's restaurant on the Mandeville lakefront.
It took out the whole front of this wall right here in front of the restaurant. And I can remember my dad getting all kind of braces and getting all kind of poles to try to keep the moving water from coming inside and tearing up furniture and things like that.
A lot has changed since the 1947 storm. St. Tammany's explosive growth over the past 2 decades has added to the potential for property damage and loss of life. Civil defense officials say the biggest hurricane problem on the North Shore may be complacency. It's been years since the North Shore has faced a hurricane head-on, and officials here are worried that people may not take storms seriously. New approaches are being tried to prepare. A hurricane emergency station complete with medical and communications gear is now stationed in the city of Slidell. It's designed to help victims who are cut off from hospitals. But officials on the North Shore say the best defense is to head north if the big storm comes. On the North Shore, I'm Mike Ross, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
Back to our quiz now with a true-false question. Modern computer forecasting has made it easy to predict where a hurricane will strike. Is that statement true or false? The answer is false. While computer modeling provides us with best guess on where the hurricane might go, the big storms are still unpredictable. Don't let an early computer projection lull you into a false sense of security. What Hurricane Andrew did to South Miami in 1992 proved the case for not staying home in the face of a major hurricane.
After that storm, engineers began looking at the way houses were being built and found lots of cause for concern. Dave McNamara has that story and what was done to remedy the situation.
It's the costliest hurricane on record. With sustained winds of 145 miles an hour, Hurricane Andrew pounds its way across South Florida. In Dade County, south of Miami, Andrew damages or destroys 80,000 homes. Newer houses are ripped apart. Entire subdivisions vanish. Out of the destruction of Hurricane Andrew has grown perhaps the toughest building code in the nation. Here in Dade County, they've taken major steps to ensure that houses being built today have a better chance of surviving the force of a hurricane.
You lose roofs, roofs blow off, get sucked off, and walls get blown out. That's
Jose Matrani heads the Department of Construction Management at Florida International University. He's also part of the newly formed International Hurricane Center. He spent years studying why so many houses failed here and helping to rewrite local building codes.
We found failures at every level of what we would call the construction delivery system, at every level.
Perhaps the most important lesson learned here is, if windows and doors stay intact, chances are your roof stays on and your house is saved. Here's what happens as strong winds move around a house. They create pressure on the roof, similar to an airplane, trying to lift it off the walls. If even a small window shatters, wind rushes in and pushes up on the roof, compounding the pressure.
Your roof or your walls might blow out, and that starts a progressive collapse.
Today, every window and door used in Dade County must be impact and wind resistant or covered with an approved storm shutter. Storm shutters are smashed with a 2x4 fired from an air cannon. Glass windows are hit the same way. Then the battered window coverings have to withstand a wind pressure test. There can be no penetration. If there's a crack wider than 1/16 of an inch, the panel fails. So far, the Dade County building codes stand alone. Other hurricane-prone areas like Metro New Orleans have not embraced the stronger standards. Is it likely there would be a lot of resistance here to those kinds of standards?
Yeah, there would probably be a tremendous resistance on that.
New Orleans area builders say their new homes are strong and well inspected, and following Dade County's lead would be expensive.
You'd be pricing a lot of people out of the market by forcing people to use stuff like this.
In Dade County, experts say their construction costs have risen 5 to 10%.
Economically, it makes sense to do what we're doing, and from the point of view of making sure that you have a safe place to ride out the storm, there's no alternative.
Dade County has tried to learn from its recent catastrophe. It's a hard lesson they don't want to repeat. Dave McNamara, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
As we said earlier in this program, most property damage by Louisiana hurricanes is caused by water, which leads us to our next quiz question. You should have flood insurance if you live in which of the following flood zones? Zone A, Zone B, Zone C, or all of the above? The answer is all of the above.
Flood insurance is required for people living in Zone A, but it is inexpensive enough to be a good precautionary measure for all homeowners. Regular homeowners' property insurance does not cover flood damage.
And you have to buy flood insurance before there are signs of trouble, because flood insurance does not go into effect until 30 days after it's purchased.
While making your hurricane preparations, be sure to consider an elderly or disabled family member or friend who may need help getting supplies, boarding up a house, or evacuating. If you're in that situation without family or friends who can help, you should call your Parish Council on Aging to register for assistance should a hurricane come.